Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. How do you give your money multiple jobs so that you can grow rich in your sleep? Then, a great guest updates us on a little-known investment vehicle that can change your investor life and save you a ton on taxes today on Get Rich Education. Countless property investors get killed with maintenance costs, but that's far less likely when you buy brand new construction. Let me tell you about JWB Real Estate Capital in Jacksonville, Florida. They pioneered the build-to-rent model where you can invest in new construction, turnkey rental properties. That's why JWB was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. To learn more and see inventory, go to newconstructionturnkey.com. Finally, Total Control Financial gives you checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Medina, Saudi Arabia to Medina, Ohio, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education, and you are back in that abundant place where financially free beats debt-free. Now, I want you to imagine yourself as a 20-year-old. Imagine that I told the 20-year-old version of you, hey, I will pay you $114 an hour to mow my lawn. That sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? But if you were to grow up and trade your time for money, could you ever get rich on just that alone? Probably not. In fact, you would need to work every single hour in a year, all 8,760 of them, at that $114 an hour rate just to make your first $1,000,000, and that is not going to happen. Those numbers might be pretty startling to you if you think you can hustle and grind your way to wealth. That, in fact, is the very opposite of growing rich in your sleep. So, what are some alternatives to the strict trade your time for dollars and sell your time for money approach that most people just default into? Well, one of them might be to invest. Now, let's approach this from the beginning with a clean slate. The definition of investing is to expend money with the expectation of achieving a profit. All right, if that's the definition of investing, to have that expectation of achieving a profit, are stocks even an investment then? Well, from that standpoint, the answer is probably yes, actually, they are. Although it doesn't typically produce income, well, then if it doesn't, maybe you could call that a speculative investment as well. Is gold an investment? Well, gold is a store of value, but do those that buy gold have an expectation of achieving a profit? Well, gold prices generally only track inflation, although it can outpace inflation at times of uncertainty, like it did around 2011. But gold's case as an investment is shakier, and gold certainly does not produce any income. Is your primary residence, the home that you live in right now, even if you own it, is that an investment, with the definition of an investment being to expend money with the expectation of achieving a profit? Well, the answer is more no than yes on your own home, because exceedingly few people have their home appreciate in value faster than everything that you put into a home, the closing costs, repairs, monthly mortgage, taxes, insurance, and all the other expenses, plus the agent commissions when you sell. Your primary residence likely fails as a financial investment. But see, your primary residence is really a lot like you taking a vacation. Both your home and your vacation are poor financial investments, but they might be good lifestyle investments. Owning a home and taking a vacation might each be worth it, but they aren't good, strict financial investments. That's not why we do those things. With your home, you pay it every month. Now, with a rental property, an income property, it pays you every month, just the opposite. So let's dig into income-producing property that you rent out to others and just why exactly it is a great investment, perhaps the ultimate investment, and it helps you grow rich in your sleep since you profit a remarkable 5 ways at the same time. Yes, if you happen to be a new listener, I spent the last couple months talking about the downsides of real estate quite a bit to try to give you 360 degrees of perspective. I discussed what could happen in a depression. Last week, Jim Rickards and I talked about what could happen in deflation or if there's a complete monetary reset. Last month, John Collins and I talked about grass growing inside a unit and all these property management hassles. A lot of those are unlikely scenarios, some of them extremely unlikely. What makes real estate stand head and shoulders above all other investments is that you're able to give your money multiple jobs. The more jobs that you assign your money to, well, then the fewer jobs that you're going to have to work the rest of your life. Give your money multiple jobs, and you're going to continue to trend away from that lawn mowing scenario that I brought up earlier. With most investments, you only achieve a profit with a capital gain if you can sell it for more than what you bought it for. But in real estate investing, what you're doing is that you're giving your money 5 simultaneous jobs. So let's break it down for you and add up your rate of return. It's been a while since we've done this here, and this is really important stuff, and I love to talk about it. I mean, this is the meat. This is the crux of why you want to be a real estate investor. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm about to give you an oversimplified example, but in a few short minutes, you'll understand all the ways that a real estate investor is paid. Because if I didn't simplify the example, it would be about 18 spreadsheets worth of material, and it just doesn't work. So let's simplify things here. We'll use an example of you purchasing a $100,000 rental single-family home like we have before. Yes, you can still find these in many markets in the Midwest and South. One of these days, inflation is going to make that $100K price point an invalid example, but it still works. Now, if you're thinking bigger and you're thinking about a $5 million apartment building instead, well, this example with a $100K home scales up. You could just multiply everything by 50 then, because everything that I discussed here will be based on ratios. So you buy this $100,000 rental single-family home with a tenant where the rent income exceeds expenses, and with a 20% down payment, you therefore have an $80,000 loan. The first of 5 profit centers is appreciation. Your property appreciates from $100,000 up to $106,000 in this first year. We're just looking at this first year here. That is commensurate with real estate's historic appreciation rate of 6%. Now, if you don't understand financial leverage, understand that your $6,000 gain is based on your down payment of just $20,000. So you've achieved a 6% return on both your $20K and the $80K borrowed from the bank. That's all yours. This magic of financial leverage means that your return is 30%, 6K divided by 20K. And now you begin to understand the power of using other people's money, the banks in this case, for leverage. The second of 5 ways you're paid is with cash flow. When your monthly rent income minus the expenses, which are the mortgage, vacancy insurance, maintenance, taxes, utilities, and management, leaves you with $150 left over of residual income. Well, annually, that's $1,800 divided by your 20K down payment again. That's another 9% return to you. This portion right here is known as the cash-on-cash return, this second way that you're simultaneously paid. Now your return is 30% from leverage appreciation plus 9% from that cash-on-cash return. You're up to 39% already. The third way you're paid, or that you're making your money do another job, is with loan paydown. Unlike your own home where you pay this, your tenant pays the monthly principal portion of this $80,000 loan on your property. And at a 6% interest rate on a 30-year loan, that's $898 that the tenant pays down for you annually, divided by your $20K of skin in the game, means that's another return for you, 4%. And this 4% return from tenant principal paydown can also be known as your ROA, your return on amortization. The fourth of 5 ways you're paid is with a tax benefit. You can have a mortgage interest deduction, the ability to pay zero capital gains tax with a 1031 exchange, and tax depreciation, which can tax shelter part of your rent income. This gets hard to measure. We're just going to conservatively call your investment tailwind another 5%. Yes, I understand that with bonus depreciation, that could be much higher, but we'll just leave it there because that gets pretty complex. And then the fifth and final way that you're paid is with inflation profiting. And few people understand this concept, few investors understand this concept, and few real estate teachers teach this. Like inflation erodes the value of your lump of savings, it also degrades your mortgage debt balance. How is that? Well, your $80,000 loan today gets easier for you to pay back over time as wages and prices escalate over time in an economy. Your bank only asks to be paid back in nominal dollars. Nominal means in name only, while the tenant pays your interest, and the bank does not require you to pay them back in real inflation-adjusted dollars. So just like you wouldn't put $80,000 in the bank and keep it there because inflation would erode its purchasing power, oppositely, you've borrowed $80,000 and inflation erodes its weight. It erodes the drag of that debt, while of course the tenant pays the interest. Jim Rickards and I actually touched on this last week. Yes, you just profited from inflation, and that is a novel concept to many because what you've done is you have borrowed rather than saved. We'll call this inflation profiting benefit another return of 3%. So there we go. Let's add it all up. Let's add up the returns from each of the 5 ways and come up with your grand total year 1 return on investment. It's a 30% return from leveraged depreciation plus 9% from that tenant cash flow. Remember, that's called that cash on cash return. Another 4% from your return on amortization, that ROA, 5% from tax benefits, and 3% from inflation profiting. In your first year, total return on investment from this income property is 51%. Yes, 51%. No wonder why we're doing this. That is what drives us. Now, why did I tell you earlier that this example is oversimplified? Well, consider that we did not factor in your buyer mortgage loan closing costs, but the seller can often help you pay these. You just got to remember that risk exists. I know you understand that. I just want to give that reminder sometimes. If you buy a property in a losing job market, or you hire the wrong property manager or more, your return can erode, and you are going to have some inevitable problems along the way. There's just no way around it. Also, note that we considered your management cost in there. That means that your income is mostly passive, and you're still going to need to give this investment your attention at times. I'd also like to point out that moving ahead in the future at year 2, year 3, and so on, your return goes down. It begins to erode. It's still going to be an excellent return, though, in most scenarios. But why does it go down? Well, I think longtime listeners can answer this already, and that is chiefly because historically, equity accumulates in your property through both appreciation and tenant-made amortization, and equity is something that always has zero return. Now you understand how real estate makes ordinary people wealthy. The past few minutes right there, that is the motivation behind why we do what we do. And on this show, really, what we do is discuss how to optimize those 5 ways and avoid mistakes. Sometimes we approach this directly, other times indirectly, where you get some long-term perspective. And importantly, we go beyond that and help transform these returns into a meaningful life for you now. We discussed the power of now here 2 weeks ago. Get Rich Education. It is about living a rich life and living it now and opting out of these life deferral plans. At least here on this earth, you've got one life to live, not one life to defer. If you were ever going to design the life you've always wanted for yourself, It would be the opposite of the getting $114 per hour to mow lawns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. What a novel concept, right? You're designing your life. I mean, why would one do life any other way? Really, it's about employing both your money and other people's money at the same time. So make your one invested dollar do 5 jobs at the same time. Give your dollar more jobs than just one, like the way that most people invest. They are the 5 ways that you're paid in real estate investing. This is what gives you that ability to eventually grow rich in your sleep. And actually, I've just made it easier than ever for you to get started down that road, where we've even added the 8 required steps in a little flow chart for you to buy property conducive to just this. And we've added that at the top of the page at greturnkey.com with the property providers below that 8-step chart. Of course, greturnkey.com is in the show notes for you. Next, let's talk about some follow-up FAQs, some frequently asked questions about a retirement vehicle that can help you build your wealth. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education.
Would you like to know the easiest way to create wealth and passive income with real estate? This is Marco Santarelli with Norada Real Estate Investments. Now you can access the best deals without the stress or hassle of having to find, renovate, or manage those properties. We save you time by providing you with passive income investment properties in some of the best U.S. markets. Learn more by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing. There's no obligation and nothing to buy. Simply visit passiverealestateguide.com and get your free copy today. That's passiverealestateguide.com.
For a real estate investor like you seeking an income property loan, go to Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. Over the years, you've heard President Chaley Ridge generously devote her time to you here on the show as a guest. Ridge provides investment property loans in most U.S. states, and you're going to find out how they've helped more people realize their dreams of real estate financial freedom than any other mortgage lender in the entire nation when you get started at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Today's guest has a remarkably diverse set of experiences. He's authored 11 books with a background in real estate investing, developing, and building. And in fact, he was here with you and I back in memorable episode 142, where he talked about the housing crisis and mortgage meltdown of 10 years ago. And then again in episode 208 late last year, where he discussed the EQRP, the Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan. And I know that the EQRP has given you, the listener, more control of your retirement funds for so many of you that have acted. He's also worked in the precious metals world, gold and silver, after a customer approached him about using their retirement funds to buy metals. It got him thinking he wanted something different where investors like you are in control and Wall Street can't gamble with your money. So he and his attorney got together and wrote the QRP book, How to Get Your Checkbook Control of Your 401k Rollover Money Now. You probably recognize this spot from the EQRP. Finally, checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Well, I want to help answer a few of your frequently asked questions about the EQRP, the Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan. So welcome back to Get Rich Education, Damian Lupo.
So good to be here, Keith. Thanks for having me back.
Now, you, the listener, might have also met Damian in person in the last year or two. He's quite active as a live speaker, including at Real Estate Guys events. Now, you, the listener, you might have invested through a 401k or a similar type of plan at one time, just because that's what most people are taught to do. You might even default into that plan. Later, you might have learned about a self-directed IRA and then rolled your 401k balance into it, because that way you learned you could invest in real assets like real estate or ATM machines or gold and silver. So just a quick overview before we talk about some of the most frequently asked questions, Damien. With the EQRP, you have a $55,000 annual contribution limit if you're single, $110,000 for married couples, and that is about 10 times the amount that one can contribute annually to a traditional or a Roth IRA. It's also multiples more than 401k contribution limits. You can invest EQRPs in nearly anything, including hard assets. Your account has creditor protection. Setup of an EQRP has less red tape than a self-directed IRA. EQRPs have a $50,000 line of credit that you can borrow against. And really the big advantage with EQRPs is it avoids the big tax with self-directed IRAs that a lot of people aren't anticipating. So did I miss any of the high points there, Damien, with the EQRP?
Those are the main pieces that should make people take a pause and go, wait, what? Did I miss something? Those things are fundamental game changers, especially in today's activities around real estate. It's such a big deal for people to not set up a self-directed IRA because a lot of them are doing that because they think that's what they're supposed to do if they want to invest in real estate. And that's the opposite of what you should do because of UBIT tax. And that's a pretty big, terrible surprise that people don't want to have experience.
Yeah, that's right. Even though you've been helping investors administer EQRPs for a while now, including many of our listeners, I think that the first response that a lot of people have is this incredulous one. It's sort of a, what? This EQRP exists? And I know you've had people move their 401k type plans to EQRPs. Have you had people move their self-directed IRAs to QRPs as well in order to avoid that little known UBIT tax that the self-directed IRA has?
In fact, most people are actually shifting their self-directed IRAs over whether they have cash or if they've already invested. A lot of times people go, well, I'm already stuck because I used my IRA, my self-directed, and I bought some real estate. And they're not stuck because we can move the assets over. And that's actually, once the assets are moved over, people are able to avoid the UBIT tax. And that's a huge, huge game changer. Most people thought they were stuck as soon as they find out about the EQRP. And that you're really not stuck. You've got options. And so a lot of people, once they're hearing about this information, it's like our friend Tom Wheelwright says, you know, if you want to pay less tax, you got to change your facts. And this is a new fact. The fact is that you've got an option to avoid UBIT. If you change your facts and you change your plan, you can invest and actually keep all your money.
Tell us about UBIT, UBIT. It stands for Unrelated Business Income Tax. That's a consequence that you have to deal with in a self-directed IRA, but you don't in an EQRP. So tell us more about that tax.
This tax it's specifically focused on UDFI, which is unrelated debt financed income. Basically, if you're investing in something that has leverage, some type of debt, that triggers the UBIT tax. It does in an IRA, but it does not in an EQRP. It's actually part of the code where there's an exemption. Most people don't really think about it. They maybe have never heard about it, or they're told not to worry about it. And the time to worry about it is typically when it's too late, when a property is being sold and they get a K1 and it says, here's the sale, here's the leverage, and their accountant says you owe 37% tax. And they say, wait a second. Nobody told me about this. And the problem is it's too late by then. But again, the fix is that you can convert that money, those assets, into an EQRP, and it's exempt from that particular type of UBIT. In this narrow space, right now, the tax code says if you invest in leveraged real estate, there's really one option, and that's an EQRP. Everything else is going to hurt you, and you're going to lose a third of your profits.
You know, we do have an awful lot of leverage investors here. Oftentimes we talk about how the return from home equity is actually zero. And when you think things through, leverage is actually a pretty powerful wealth creator compared to something like compound interest. So we're surely dealing with a lot of leverage investors here. However, with any type of retirement plan, you probably still cannot touch the cash, like the cash flow on a monthly basis, since we still have this tax shelter. Is that right?
It is. There's a great tool inside. You'd mentioned the line of credit to where with your account, with your EQRP, you have the ability to write yourself a check for up to $50,000 or half of your money, whichever's less. So let's say you've got a couple $100,000 in your IRA. You go, well, I'm stuck and I can't touch that until I'm 59 and a half. Not true. You can literally convert that money over into an EQRP. And then if you want to write yourself a check for $50,000 and go invest that in income producing property, all of a sudden you get to keep all of that money because you personally owe your EQRP $50,000 back. But all the profits, if you turn your 50 into 100,000 or 200, or you turn it into a couple $1,000s a month in income, you actually get to spend that. So there's a way to tap into your retirement money account and use that for today's needs so that you don't have to wait for all, down the road and be able to, you don't have to wait until you're 59 and a half.
Now, there are some considerations for people that are trying to put together a syndication and trying to draw investor capital that way with the EQRP. Tell us more about that.
What we're seeing right now is that real estate deals are abundant. They're everywhere. And we typically run out of our own money. And so there's $29 trillion in retirement accounts. What's happening is people are putting together groups. They're raising money. They're getting a bunch of people and they're saying, hey, put in 50 or 100,000. And as a group, they're able to buy and invest in larger projects. The thing that I'm seeing people do that's very successful is sharing the idea that you can take your money out of Wall Street and put it into real estate, and really going to people and showing them how to invest with you. So if you're wanting to invest and buy bigger investments, using this tool to free people's money up so they can invest with you allows everybody to become freer together. It's an effective way to share and market because you're giving somebody a tool not just to do stuff with you, but to really open up their potential and not free them from the casino that we talk about.
That's right. And then, of course, you as an investor yourself can potentially use these EQRP funds in someone else's syndication. There are some new rules that are coming from 401k reform, and that might play into someone's mindset around all this. Can you tell us about those?
What happened, it's interesting that most people don't know this, back in the 90s, we had this balanced budget phenomenon under the Clinton administration. People said, oh, that's so great. And Congress thought they were very smart. What happened is the Roth accounts came into play. They came into existence. And a lot of people converted money into Roth. So they paid taxes now. And that's great, created a ton of extra revenue for the government. But it also took away all that money that the government would have gotten in 2020s and 2030s. And so they're going to be missing a whole bunch of revenue. The Roth account is one of the best things that's ever happened. I think Congress is starting to realize we're going to have some budgetary problems because if we don't cap the benefit of this thing, then we're not going to have enough money to pay the bills. Part of the legislation was to limit what people could do if they inherited a Roth account. They have to actually take all the distributions within 10 years and take it all out. That today, if you inherit an account, you're able to basically stretch it over your entire lifetime. I happen to have had an account that was inherited, and so I get to spend it for the rest of my life, which means I can effectively pay no taxes like anybody that currently inherited one. So this is one of those rules that is something for people to keep in mind, and not just for this rule, but keep in mind that some of these benefits that are there, like the Roth account, are eventually probably going to be changed, and they often grandfather things in. So if you're going to do something, timing is important because Congress will find ways to shut down these great benefits when they realize they're costing their ability to spend. It's costing them, and they want to bring back the money to their coffers to spend. Some of these things are going to change and impact the EQRPs. It's really hard to tell what's going to happen in the future. People ask me, well, what do you think is going to happen in a year? And I say, I don't know, except it's going to be the same season it is today. But beyond that, it's really hard to tell. I just always recommend people take advantage and plant seeds in different things so that at least you're in before they change the rules, because again, they oftentimes grandfather things. So the EQRP is the best place to be with your money because you have power and control, and you have the ability to use the Roth account at any income level. That's not available with an IRA because income taps you out. You make too much money, you can't use the Roth, and it becomes very complex. I highly encourage people to make sure you're taking advantage of the Roth account in some form before you're literally told it doesn't exist or you can't use it anymore. And that could easily happen in the next decade.
Well, you know what it comes down to when the rubber meets the road? 401k administrators do not want to give up the account that they're holding for an investor. So what should an investor that wants to move their funds from their 401k into an EQRP, how should they approach that? What should they tell the 401k administrator? Just simply tell them it's my money and I want it? Like, what works? Because a lot of times these people don't want to give you your money.
We've seen consistently is that a lot of administrators and custodians, especially administrators, will tell people effectively that you're too stupid to have your money and you're not smart enough. And they'll tell them no. And so what we'll do is we'll get on the phone with the administrator or the custodian and we'll walk them through and we will push back because they can't confuse us and they can't use jargon. They can't say something that is not true because we'll just say, no, actually you have to, and here's the code. What you have to do is basically decide that you want control. And then at that point, either you tell them and they say yes, or you tell them and they say no. And then you call somebody like us and we get in there because we don't take no for an answer. But ultimately, if you decide you want your money, that's what you have to do is tell them to give you your money. Otherwise, they're just not gonna.
There are so many potential upsides and advantages to one using an EQRP versus an inflexible 401k. Talk to us about the risk of an EQRP. Is maybe the greatest risk that the investor has to be responsible because basically you now have checkbook control of your retirement funds.
This is a really good question. When people ask me who shouldn't do this, and I'll point blank, and sometimes I'll tell people that I'm talking with, we can't do this for you because you're reckless. And what I see people doing is they're not responsible, or they're trying to play games with an 800-pound gorilla called the IRS. And so people that are going to try to screw the IRS should not do this because you have so much control of your money that it's pretty easy to cheat and you're going to get caught. And when you get caught, the penalties are brutal. And so I don't think this is a good tool for people that are either reckless or they don't know how to play by the rules. I mean, the tax code is set up for people to win. If you're doing real estate, if you're doing business, if you're out there to cheat, I mean, you're going to be doing a timeout box behind bars. It's called tax evasion. And I see some people trying to do that because paying no taxes is not enough. They have to find ways to screw the system. It's just not necessary. So there are some people that really shouldn't do this, or people that are just nervous and can't make a decision without second guessing everything. They really need to have somebody else monitoring and kind of hand holding, keeping their money. It'd be hard for me to believe that very many people listening to this are those type of people. But the reality is there are certain people that should not use something where they have total control.
Yeah, well, it comes down to making a decision. An investor just needs to decide. Damien is an expert at administering EQRPs. As you heard, his company will even advocate on your behalf with the plan administrator with 401ks if need be. Damien, let our audience know how they can learn more about the EQRP. What's the next step?
Best thing to do is grab your phone if you're listening to this or you have your phone nearby and send a message to the number 72,000. And you're simply going to send a message and it's going to be QRP. So you send QRP to 72,000 and we're going to give you a little bit of a Cliff Note report on what we've been talking about. It'll help you understand what this is and figure out if it's a good choice for you.
He's been administering it for quite a while. If you want to text QRP in all capital letters to 72,000. Damien, it's been great having you back on the show to answer some of these FAQs.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me back, Keith.
The EQRP, again, there's a generous $55,000 annual contribution limit if you're single, $110,000 per year for married couples. That is about 10 times the amount that you can contribute annually to a traditional or a Roth IRA, and it's also multiples more than 401k contribution limits. You can invest in nearly anything with the EQRP, including most real assets. The account has creditor protection. Setup has less tape than a self-directed IRA, and EQRPs have that $50,000 line of credit that you can borrow against today. And EQRPs avoid that big tax of self-directed IRAs. I know many friends, including some in my own hometown, that have set up EQRPs. And it's unconventional, but you know what else is unconventional? Building real wealth. So either you can be a conformer or you can build wealth. Author Robin Sharma says something interesting about change. He says, change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. And that sounds about right. You can go back and listen to last year's show where Damien and I do a full episode about the EQRP. But I suggest that if this piqued your interest and this could benefit you at all moving forward to learn more and getting the free QRP book, Damien and his company have made it easy. Just text message the 3 capital letters QRP to 72,000. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.